So my name's Judith, and in my working life, I was a registered nurse. Palliative care is an area of nursing where symptoms are dealt with. There's no attempt to cure people. People are dying, but it is aggressive symptom control, really good nursing care, and supportive care for patients and their families. At about 1989, I began to work in the palliative care unit at Parkwood Hospital here in London as a registered nurse, and I was privileged to care for many patients, and including some patients who tragically died of AIDS. Most of the patients on our unit suffered from cancer, but they had other illnesses as well, like emphysema, that sort of thing. And given the time period, some patients had AIDS. Not very many, but the ones that we had were memorable. But first of all, I was struck by, for the most part, how very young they were. They were, I was in my 30s at the time. They were much younger. They were in their 20s, one as young as 18. Very, very, very young men, not ready to die. I mean, not that anybody ever is, but I mean, when you get to be my age, the thought has crossed your mind. At 22, it's just not on your horizon. The fact that no one really seemed to be visiting them, and that's always a concern, because nurses can only do so much, and our director used to say, we don't just admit the patient, we admit the family. And it's a family. We're with a family when a patient dies, and in the days leading up to a patient's death. That was really really noticeable, that people's families didn't visit. And at the time, I had been an ally of the gay and lesbian community since the early 70s. Since I was 18. I was only vaguely aware of the Stonewall riots in '69, but shortly after that, I became aware and considered myself an ally. I knew several lesbians. I really didn't know any gay men, and I was aware that was because even in 1989, many people were still closeted, sadly. So I was aware of that, and I thought that I knew what that meant, and I think that now, oh wow, straight cisgendered woman that I was, I thought that I knew what that meant. But I asked one young man once, I said, I've noticed that you don't have a lot of visitors, and that the visitors tend to be, they don't seem to be close to you. They're people you know, but like, what about your family? And he looked at me and he said, well, my family doesn't know I'm sick, because my family doesn't know I'm gay. And I just felt like I'd been punched in the stomach, and I thought, wow, this is what it means to be in the closet. It means that no one is here for you in your last days. But without your significant people, without your crowd of people around you, without the people who love you. And I just found that really just heartbreaking, but also like, how could I have thought that I understood this? On an individual level, there are things that people teach you. There were some AIDS patients who were not gay, who had contacted AIDS through intravenous drug use. I mean, they too were alone. The thought of the disease. I mean, people were even in 1989. People were frightened even to touch someone with AIDS. Death is an intimate experience, and it was a privilege to be with people as they died, and it was a privilege to be with people who died of AIDS as well. Some of them had easier deaths than others. Some had difficulties because they were alone, but it was a privilege to be with them. I think in some cases the experience may have just made the whole issue of homosexuality just sort of unimportant, because this was death, and death is the great leveler. We're all, from the moment we're born, we're all on a path to the end of our lives, right? And every patient becomes equal, and it doesn't matter so much what you perhaps might think. I will say that I worked with just an exceptional team of nurses, just exceptional. And I don't think there was ever a moment where anyone was less than professional or less than caring. And people, it was a good place to work. It was a positive working environment. It was profound stuff that we were dealing with. People who have, even nurses who have not worked in palliative care don't maybe understand it as much, but some people are always more progressive than others. But for the most part, I think nurses tend to be non-judgmental, and that patients are treated equally for the most part, regardless of what your personal views are. No one paid attention to AIDS for such a long time. It wasn't until around 1986 or 87 that the U.S. government, that Ronald Reagan even said the word, right? That talked about AIDS being a health issue. And so I think that that attitude really, it was sort of like the disease itself was hushed. People didn't like, I remember saying to someone that I had this new job, and I was really, I was working at Parkwood, and I was working in the palliative care unit, and people would say, well, what's that like? And I said, well, it's really interesting. It's really challenging, and it's the work I've always wanted to do. It's just amazing. And I mean, today, most of our patients have cancer, and a few have AIDS. And I said that to one of my neighbors. She actually took a step back. She actually stepped back when I said that I had taken care of a patient with AIDS. And she's stepping back from someone who has taken care of an AIDS patient 4 days ago. I've washed my hands, everything. And when if we had relief nurses come to the floor, or new nurses come, they would be a little bit nervous about just the protocol for hand washing and that sort of thing. And there was one time a nurse came to the floor and practically just had put on a gown and a glove and mask and everything to give someone a glass of water. She was very kind, very, very pleasant to this patient, but it was her own stuff, and so she needed sort of help. You don't actually have to do this for a glass of water. If you're changing the dressings, okay, fine. If you're emptying your urinal or that sort of thing, yes, you need gloves. But like, hand someone a glass of water is not really, it just isn't that easy to get. I'm not sure that social change really played a huge part in it. It played a small part, but no one goes to the hospital and leads with their sexual orientation. Like, no one does that. No one says, I don't show up at a bird and say, I've chest pain and I'm straight. No one leads with that. And people didn't lead with that either. Maybe at the beginning, people assumed that all our patients with AIDS were gay. Then they stopped assuming that because there was just more information that it's not a gay disease. It's a disease that is spread through contamination of body fluids. I was an early ally, and I know that many people my age were not early allies. Good friends who struggled with it, who had a hard time. They came from religious homes, they came from small towns, they came from narrow backgrounds, and we all have prejudices and biases that we have to confront and work through. Happy that I didn't have to work through that.